holidays, and the other one is caring for the caregiver.
Okay.
Yeah. Am I? Is
And I'm seeing these are, I don't have an enormous amount to say on either topic, because we were talking about
perfect.
little
Yeah,
vignettes.
exactly,
right?
exactly. Little vignettes, so it could just, oh wow, that was something, like a great nugget, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, little vignettes.
Okay.
And then if you have time, what time is your show, or what time should you leave here?
I should not leave not later than 5.
Okay.
Yeah, that's earlier, great.
Yeah. They probably don't want me to be gone. In fact, you know, the phone is on. All right, Ken.
I'm ready.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Do you need lights?
No, actually, my camera's pretty bright, so I don't want to blind you guys. So.
Should we sort of walk in and shake hands and then sit down, or just go ahead and go and
I
we
think
can take
we'll
those
start
shots
with
later?
this because those part were pretty easy. So this one, at least you're still fresh and you don't want to miss whatever you guys want to talk about.
Oh, I have his bio right next door. I'll be right back. Well, actually, no, it's on the computer. Let me just look. You've probably done tons of these.
Not like this, and you're way more techno than I am. I mean, you know about Facebook Live.
Oh no, I just learned all of this stuff like when I
But you
decided.
say you're Twitter, and I'm no Instagram. I'm not any of that stuff.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get you on because I think it's a great way to interact, and I think once there's a following, and there already we met a week. There's
Yeah.
already 300 people following this project.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think the more we do, the more content we put out.
Okay,
there.
I know that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
I thought of what the hell do I have to say in 124 characters or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
One more thing to soak up your time during your day.
Okay, let's see. Hopefully that doesn't go off. Can we turn up?
Yeah,
that one?
I'm gonna.
And I think next year, this is something I'm going to share with you too. Next year, in January, there's a guy that, like I said, Brendan Bouchard. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he sort of like a motivational speaker, Tony Robbins kind of guy.
Okay.
I'm going to buy his program, which is like $700 or whatever, and we can share his login. But basically, he shares ways of how you can use your expertise through media to create little, pockets of income. Whether it be like an ebook, webinars, and things like that. So
Okay, great.
yeah, we'll learn together.
Okay. Good. I'm in the remedial class.
Yes.
I'm a whole lot older than you, and so all this doesn't come as natural.
Well, spiritually, I'm remedial. So I think
Okay.
together.
Okay, good. That's
Together
good.
we're. All right. Let me. Do you need water or anything?
Might be handy to have it
Yeah,
here in
yeah.
case it gets dry. So is this what you do for a living?
No, actually, I'm an X-ray tech. I help Dr. Go with his procedures.
Oh, okay.
And he just, showed up one day and then he said, oh, he's doing this project. And then I was like, and then I saw his videos in Facebook and he's doing his own video and interview. And maybe I can help him out a little, show it a little more professional looking. Because I do this mostly for wedding.
Oh,
I do
okay.
wedding videos.
So you know your way around.
Yeah, but I've never done like an actual interview like what we're
Okay.
doing right now. So maybe it's a good opportunity for
And
me.
you got 2 cameras going?
Yeah.
Oh, the video cameras that don't look like video cameras. They look like
Yes.
DSLRs. Okay.
They are DSLRs, and they record. I use them to record videos
Okay.
because the quality of it is a lot better than an actual. Well, if I don't need to buy those high end camcorders.
Yeah.
So this one's is you'll get the quality that you need without the high price.
Well, I should talk to you because I have a small. I did have a small Canon camera for traveling.
Uh-huh.
That did a lot of manual things, which I liked, but it was small because I don't want to take a big heavy.
Yes.
But anyway, and I also have a camcorder, but the
Uh-huh.
camcorder is like 6 years old and it's probably obsolete, but it does allow me to zoom and
Yes.
take the low light situations that the little camera does.
So it's
Thank you.
not cold.
That's okay.
Do you feel more comfortable? My jacket was off.
Doesn't matter to me.
I'm not even in the shot.
Makes you look
No,
official.
you're fine.
Okay.
I'm just focus on.
Say when.
I'm ready.
All right, here we are with the Live Again Project, and we have UCLA Oncology Chaplain Michael Esselin joining us. Thank you, Michael, for
Thanks for having me.
Michael, we met because when the Live Again Project first opened, you were one of the very first names that came up to kind of talk about a patient's cancer experience. How did you get started with all of this?
That's a very long story to shorthand it. It's a third career for me to be a chaplain. I was a professional dancer as a young man. I had a 20-year career as a designer, did a lot of architectural work. And the AIDS crisis hit. I'm a gay man and volunteered for a fledgling volunteer AIDS hospice organization during the peak years of the crisis before the drug cocktails came in. And so it was a life-changing event that sort of refocused my life. Maybe 10 years later, opportunity came to even begin an internship as a chaplain, which seemed kind of ridiculous to me at the time, but I thought, why not? And it ended up making sense, and here I am. That was 16 years ago.
Wow. What was the road to the TED Talk like?
The TED Talk happened because I do a lot of speaking in a lot of venues, but in a lot of faith communities, particularly Unitarian Universalist faith communities. That's my own faith tradition, and there's a congregation in North San Diego County where I'm invited to speak every year. One of the congregants is a big fan of my work. She was involved with a TED event that was happening down there and said, would you be interested in doing this if I nominate you? And so I said, sure, and that's how that happened.
Right. We're talking about caring for the caregiver today.
Okay.
Now, I had an uncle recently diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, and he has a friend, and they've given up, and their family members didn't really know how to interact with them during that time. And I know they're going through a lot. What are some of those things, both emotional and physical, that caregivers can go through during caring for a cancer patient?
Well, one of the most obvious but might be overlooked is that this is happening to me too, this impending loss. And yet I'm not entitled to my feelings because my loved one is the one who's sick. So I'm going to be stoic and hold all that in, and I'm just going to be of service, of service, of service. And I don't have time for my own feelings, nor do I deserve it because they're the ones with cancer. And that is also echoed in the larger circle of life. People come to the loved one and say, how is Ruth doing, for instance? Not, how are you doing? The cancer happens to the whole family, not just to the patient.
Mm-hmm.
So the caregiver can sometimes disappear and also not honor their own loss. It can be very hard to get support and nurture that person because often they're stretched way too thin. Holding down a job, taking care of the kids, picking up all the slack for the loved one who is ill, so how am I supposed to go to a support group and all that? Realistic concerns. But just having the frame of mind, hey, I need a breath too, to take time for a walk on the beach, to go find one good friend, which is not always easy, who's an excellent listener, who can just allow me to vent my own feelings. The one piece that's a little tricky sometimes is the patient themselves is very aware. I'm making gross generalizations, but often the patient is very aware of the pain and suffering they're causing their loved one who's having it. I hate putting my kids out. I hate putting my husband out. I know he's miserable doing this. The kids, the husband, I don't want to put more burden on my mom with my own stuff. So there's this disconnect. And yet, from a spiritual perspective, one thing that's healing beyond disease is intimacy, connection, telling the truth. So there's already this wedge in the intimacy. The patient is feeling kind of isolated in their own suffering, somewhat, and they're feeling disconnected with the one they've been most intimate with their whole lives. So one thing that can be challenging is, I hear often patients say, I wish my husband would just let me hear his problems. He doesn't want to burden me with them. I was just visiting with a patient an hour ago before I came here, who was talking about what a gift it is to be of service. She's in a 12-step program and she sponsors several other people. And no matter how bad she's got it, to be of service to somebody else kind of lifts her up, makes the load lighter. Same for a cancer patient, might have robbed them of so much, disempowered them of so much. And yet, if they could still be a listening ear to someone else whose problems, if we start comparing, might not seem as serious, their problems nevertheless, it can be such a gift to the patient, it can be a gift to the caregiver. But it's a risk, but the payoff is the intimacy.
Do you find that patients or caregivers should initiate this conversation? Is it easier one way or the other?
I don't think there's an easy way to generalize that. That's the kind of the nuances of the relationship. But if somebody doesn't take a risk, the conversation doesn't happen. And it may have to be a repeated request. No, honey, I'm fine. We're just all about taking care of you. No, that's all I care about. A week goes by. Honey, you seem stressed. No, honey, I'm fine. It might take repeated requests. You know what? I just can't take it anymore. I'm so tired of driving those kids to school and dealing with that traffic and getting you to the doctor, and I would just love to go to the gym. Sometimes that can be such a gift for a patient to hear, oh, God, thank you for just telling me the truth. It's hard to be me, too. Let me tell you what I miss. And then what we've got is intimacy.
Wow. Yeah, I think at least in my experience with my family members, it was very difficult because in the Asian culture, speaking of feelings is difficult. You were supposed to take care of mom or dad when they're sick and have cancer, and it's a duty that you need to do,
Yes.
and you don't ever come up. So I think those are some barriers to care culturally. Have you found any barriers to self-care?
What you described sounds like an exponential version of what is kind of traditionally American culture as well. Even though we're much more accustomed to talking about feelings, in gender relationships we still got these rigid norms.
Mhm.
Men are supposed to be stoic, keep their feelings to themselves, et cetera, et cetera. So how did it work out in your family? Was anybody able to kind of push the barriers a little bit to establish connection?
I think each individual person was a little bit different. With my most recent loss, it was a final just connecting with my uncle that I never really spoke to very much, and I certainly, wish I would have handled, things a little bit differently. But I think you just have to have that courage and vulnerability to bring things that are there. And I had one of the patients share his story, and as he became more vulnerable, their family became closer, and there wasn't that disconnect of, okay, well, what role am I supposed to be playing? How can I best care for you?
Vulnerability is a key value for me, and I believe it's a key value toward intimacy. There's a paradox in that we think it's a weakness to be vulnerable, and I actually think it takes a great deal of strength to be vulnerable, to risk that, to telling my own truth. And yet, cancer, if anything at all, is a doorway into the land of vulnerability in so many levels. I can't do this for myself, I can't do that for myself, I can't take care of my own feelings. All of that is vulnerability. But all of those same vulnerabilities can come up for the caregiver too.
Yeah.
I can't take care of you more. I can't stop you from getting sick. I can't stop you from dying. No matter, and I can't even take care of you in a minimal way because I've got to go to work and make money and all of that stuff, and I want to be here with you. But if we can tell the truth, if we could risk the vulnerability, then I believe we have a chance of the connection, which helps keep everybody afloat. Just being seen, being heard and understood, and not just being playing a robotic role in the relationship. Well, I'm the son, the dutiful son, I'm supposed to do this with a smile on my face and not complain. And I hear that that's a deep cultural value, so to try to push against that is hard.
Definitely. Have you had caregivers go through depression?
Oh, God, yes. And a lot of it has to do with powerlessness. There is And the powerlessness hits, I think, almost everybody touched by cancer. The patient themselves comes up against it, and the caregiver most certainly. I can't fix this. I can't do this. And particularly, again, getting back to gender stereotypes and norms, men in this culture tend to go to the fix-it mode. What can I do to make it better? I hear a lot of wives complain, my husband just won't listen to me. I don't want him to fix my problems, I just want him to hear me. But when I say I'm depressed, well, have you gone to a therapist? What about taking the antidepressant? What about this? All of those are solutions in fix-it mode, not tell me more. Those are magic words for me, just tell me more. There are caregiver support groups. They're wonderful. Nobody gets it like somebody who's in the same boat as you are. The caregivers are often spread way too thin.
Mm-hmm.
Who has time to go to a caregiver support group? If that is an option for somebody, I highly recommend it. Some people say, oh, but groups are just not for me. There is nothing like a group of people who are in the same boat you are.
Are there any other resources, online or these groups that you can talk about that caregivers can probably attend?
For those in Los Angeles, there are communities. We, even at the Sims-Mann Center at UCLA, do not have a caregiver support group, but we do have individual counseling available for caregivers, spiritual counseling, psychological counseling. And there are other, in the LA area, other community organizations, the Cancer Support Community, We Spark at Sherman Oaks, so forth. They have caregiver support groups, but every community doesn't have those. I have patients at UCLA that live in Orange County, there are no such groups available. So, and those are big urban areas, so I don't know how people find such resources if they don't live in those areas.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. I think oftentimes, well, I do have one more question. Do you think that the caregiver ever stops to think, I'm really stressed out at this point, or do things just happen so quickly, they're not aware of what's happening and the dynamic that's going on with the patient and losing power and not feeling like they're in control?
I do hear quite a bit from men and women alike as caregivers. If I'm visiting with a patient in the infusion clinic and the loved one is sitting right next to them, I'm talking to the patient and then I turn to the loved one and say, how are you doing? Sometimes there's a stiff upper lip, fine, or don't really want to talk about it. But very often I hear, I don't even have time to think about it. It's like they're in crisis mode. So I'll feel my feelings later is kind of the strategy. Right now I have to worry about getting them to radiation every day, getting the kids picked up, making sure the insurance is taken care of, but I'll feel my feelings later. So yes, in answer to your question, I think it's a very common situation that there's no time to breathe and say, wow, this is hitting me too and I'm really hurting. Some people are aware that that's happening and I'm still not going to go there because if I do, I'll fall apart. I need to keep my kind of being the armored tank mode. And if I let any feeling in, it's all going to collapse.
Now, you as a chaplain in that sort of situation, is there anything you do at that time to help mitigate that or bring awareness to the caregiver?
I think what your second suggestion, bringing awareness, yes. If somebody's got a system that's working for them and they're hanging on by a thread, I certainly want to try to support that system and getting them through.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say, well, let's talk about your feelings some more, and then have them fall apart in the infusion clinic when they've got to worry about the next appointment and getting them there. But bringing up to awareness and just acknowledging, I know this is rough for you too. It has to be. Look at all you're doing. And just a little positive affirmation. You're doing such a great job. You're making a Herculean effort to take care of Alice or whomever. Just to be seen. I see how hard this is, your job, that you need support too. And sometimes I think that is its own kind of spiritual care, just to be seen.
Do you think it's difficult for caregivers to reach out to their friends or other family members for help and support?
I think sometimes it is because the family members and the loved ones' attention is going to keep going back. Well, how is she doing? Is she eating? The conversation is naturally going to turn to the patient, that you kind of have to claim your own space with it. No, I need support now. Will you listen to me? Sometimes they just want a break. I want to go play golf and I don't want to think about it. That is care. I want to be able to go to work and have a whole day of work where I'm not thinking about. So a lot of caregivers will say work is a distraction. It's a gift to me to be able to go and get my mind off of this. Sometimes they'll feel guilty about saying that, as if leaving my attention off of this means I don't love her or him or whatnot. But it's a way to kind of remember who I am. I feel like everybody, cancer is an extreme circumstance for everybody in the family. Any opportunity to be reminded who you are and what you're connected to me, is a spiritual experience. Religion at its Latin root, religare, just means to connect. So what is it that connects you to yourself, to your humanity, to any sense of a higher power? So if it's walking on the beach and looking at a sunset, that becomes a religious experience. If I don't have an access to that, I'm going to get diminished. So, yeah, it can be hard to ask friends. But sometimes it doesn't have to be the in-depth conversation. It can just be the distraction. Remember who I am. I want to go get drunk with the guys. Can I just do that for one night? Had a patient earlier this year. The husband loved international travel and kind of to exotic places. He was devout in his care for his wife, but she understood that every now and then, this was a long-term illness. He needed a break. As long as she had caregiver, he would go off for a week, sometimes 2 weeks, always checking in, but she knew he needed that to kind of refuel his jets and to be inspired, and then he would.
So important to highlight that the cancer patient is definitely not the only one that requires
Absolutely.
care.
Right.
And so many things you brought to light and gave us so much insight on what cancer patient family members and the caregiver goes through. I'm hearing that vulnerability is essential, and being able to kind of express yourself is of utmost importance, and just remember how you connect with the world.
Not only the vulnerability of that person,
Yeah.
but being willing to see and recognize the vulnerability of the other. It's a two-way street. Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you.
All right, that was great. Was there anything we didn't touch or highlight?
I'm sure there's a million things.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
just- yeah.
You are wonderful. I mean, everything just flows so naturally, and you speak. So, did you practice on your public speaking at all, or?
I have been a public speaker for 25 years about homophobia. I have a nonprofit anti-homophobia speakers bureau. So I never formally studied public speaking, but
Did you notice?
But
Did you go back and look at maybe or hear some of your initial?
well, they're not recorded. I go
Right.
in the classrooms and it's very conversational,
Right.
so you have to get very adept at
Just having
speaking on
conversation.
your feet, being willing for the conversation to go where the conversation needs to go, and realizing, I mean, I went into very hostile situations. Homophobia is in a different place in the culture now than it was 25 years ago.
Mhm.
Going into a hostile classroom, people are going to come at me. I have to be willing to practice what I preach and be vulnerable and know that the connection is what's going to transform the conversation.
I felt as if I ended it unnaturally. And I'm
Okay.
wondering if there's a way for us to maybe, come to something so that it. Did you feel that way?
No.
No? Okay. Okay.
I felt like we were kind of done, so I'm glad you did that.
Okay. Well, good. Ken, what do you think?
Sounds good to me.
That was like
I mean-
that was like a one take thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have nothing else to add.
Yeah. Can we think of anything that maybe we haven't shared that maybe we'd like to include? Everything was brilliant. I hope you got everything there. Everything was brilliant.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah. I think people hearing that and being able to you really kind of nailed just how people are feeling and why people may fear stepping forward. And I think that can at least, this conversation will at least bring awareness, yeah.
Just an example I used with this woman a few years ago, we didn't get it on tape, but it's not essential, but.
Are you backing up?
No, I'm still rolling.
Oh,
Keep
okay.
going.
oh,
Keep
I didn't
going.
know.
That idea of the one who's been debilitated by the illness, the gift it can be for them to be of service. I got a really bold illustration of that 20-some years ago when I was doing volunteer work for Project Angel Food in Los Angeles, taking home-cooked meals to homebound people with AIDS. And I had my same route that I would do a few times a week, and so I got to know the fellows, and some would just say thanks for the food and close the door, and some wanted to say, come in, can you talk a little while? And that was sort of the beginning of chaplaincy. And I remember this one guy who was very near death, and look, those of you who didn't live through that time of the crisis, it was just horrific, unimaginable what people went through. And he said something to me like, you seem out of sorts today, are you okay? And I said, well, I'm having a rough time, but I don't need to talk about it, because look at what you're dealing with. He said, no, it would be such a gift to me if you would just tell me what's going on. So I'm complaining about what comparatively seems like small, inconsequential stuff, and he's really receiving it. The thing I realized is I gave him a gift. Life had taken so much from him, yet he still had the power to be a listener, to be of service, to show some compassion. He got to feel a little lighter too after that. I'm still me giving my gift, even though I look like a wasted human being.
That's so powerful. That's so powerful. Okay, so we're going to transition to the next topic. Do you want him to stay the same position, change him up in any way? Since this is going to be like a different piece.
I can.
Put in one. You're still recording, right?
Yes.
So, you've been giving talks around, I know you've been giving a TED Talk, and you've spoken in many different avenues. What are some of the type of talks that you've been giving out there?
I think when I look back on it, I have, a couple dozen different talks of different lengths, but they all had come back to the theme of finding the grace to be a human being and weaving stories together in such a way that it explores deeper questions about life and meaning and mortality. Every single talk, even though it's a different title, a different kind of how we use our stories to make spiritual sense of our lives, or there's a talk about comparing suffering. It could be worse is one of my talks. We use that expression a lot. It could always be worse as a way that we're supposed to get some perspective and feel some attitude of gratitude right now because it could be worse. The flip side of that is I often see people really berating themselves, increasing their suffering because what have I got to complain about? In an infusion clinic, I've only got stage 1 breast cancer. Look at that poor person, they've got that. You've still got cancer. Are you entitled to compassion? Are you entitled to your feelings, your fears, everything that comes up? So there's a underbelly to that strategy of it could be worse. So one of my talks is about that, but ultimately it's about the grace to be a human being. Yeah, it could be worse, and this stinks, and I'd rather not have it. Can both things be true?
Powerful. Now, if people wanted you to speak at their organization, what's the best way to contact you?
Probably directly through my website, www.michaelesselun.com, MICHAELESELUN.
I believe that's how I contacted you.
That is.
All right. He responds. All right. So let's do the next segment.
Okay.
All right. All right. Talk to spiritual facilitator. Or?
I like that.
Yeah.
I'm open to
Yeah.
leader sounds a little pretentious.
Yeah.
Full of myself.
Their artwork their poems, a way for them to be able to self-express so that they can leave others moved, touched, and inspired. So, so that's hopefully what we can collect, and I think,
Right.
thank you for being a part of this.
Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah, and, I could show you what I know from live and social media, because I had vacation last week.
Oh,
That's why we were able to
Right.
meet, so I went to a couple of social media panels.
oh, good, so
Yeah.
you can tutor me.
Yeah, we can kind of do this together, and I think you'll be surprised at all the different ways you can interact online and how to kind of increase exposure. But you've got such a powerful message, and I'd love for that message to reach more people.
Me too. Thanks.
All right. Are we good?
I'm ready.
All right. Okay, hi, Kian Vu here again with Michael Esselin. He is, we'll start over on that one.
Okay. Hang on. I'll do it. And whenever you're ready.
All right, here we are with another segment for the Live Again project. We have Michael Esselin here. He serves as the chaplain at the Simsman UCLA Center for Integrative Oncology. He has worked extensively in palliative care hospice with adult psychiatric patients. He is highly regarded as a keynote speaker and speaks extensively to healthcare professional, patient population, and faith communities. I found him because he was a TED speaker, and I was thinking, wow, what knowledge and what vast experience he has with patients and their family members with cancer. Michael, welcome.
Thank you.
Here we are nearing the holiday season, and I think many people think of the holidays with memories from childhood and certain traditions. It must be very difficult for patients and their families to go through the holiday season, as some of those traditions might not be possible to have anymore.
Or access to the feelings that we hope to get through engaging in those traditions. These feelings of gratitude and joy and bringing in the new year. What if we may not have a new year? What if, our new year, we're not going to live to see the end of next year? I think even backing up a little bit to put that in context, something that I hear almost universally from cancer patients is the frustration they feel from people in their world telling them how to feel or what you've got to do. As soon as you say, I've got a diagnosis of cancer, oh, well, you've got to eat kale, you've got to go to this clinic, you've got to read this book, you've got to say this prayer. My aunt had that and she did this and she's fine. All of that might be well-intentioned, but it just isolates the patient. So when holiday time comes, there is this cultural demand. All you have to do is go out on the street, the decorations. We are supposed to feel happy, joyful, grateful. What if I don't? Is there a place for me? Can I still have access to some kind of connection and sense of celebration that may not look anything like what the culture expects of me, but the pressure can be overwhelming. Some patients say, I just have to go away, I have to pretend like the holidays just don't exist. This year we're not going to do Thanksgiving. And something I work with patients a lot is trying to create a personal, individualized sense of what's sacred. We've got maybe religious ideas of what's sacred, we've got cultural ideas of what's sacred. You got to have turkey, and you got to be with grandma, and you got to be with the cousins. But what if that just doesn't fit for me this year? So Joseph Campbell says something like, the sacred is the place where you can find yourself again and again. That's as good a definition as I know. So holiday time, maybe it isn't about being with my family this year. Maybe I want to go get a pizza and sit on the beach by myself and watch the sunset for Thanksgiving or Christmas. Or maybe something that doesn't fit the norm. That could be a challenge. Family may not agree. The world wants you to feel a certain way. The themes of so much of my work have to do with finding the grace to be a human being. So can I offer myself grace to be who I am and feel how I feel in this moment, even if it doesn't correlate to how the culture would prefer that I feel.
You know, so many people probably don't have that sense of who they are maybe before cancer then. Do you find it difficult for some people not being able to relate to that and knowing to kind of care for themselves or knowing what makes them happy? Yeah.
You make an excellent point. What I would say to yes, some folks do. I don't know what that is. My challenge to them is, well, then that's your spiritual quest. Who am I if I'm not all these things I thought I did? To me, that's an essential piece of the cancer journey. If your looks are gone, if your athletic ability is gone, or whatever the thing is you used to take pride in or used to identify, I was a runner, I was the get-it-done mom who could do 12 things at once, and I can't do that anymore. Does that mean you die? Or does that mean, did your essential self disappear? Or is your essential self something more than that?
Mhm.
And if we don't know who that person is, then that becomes our quest to find out. Because in the end, we're all going to lose all those things that
Right.
we think are so important. Our money, our
Right.
jobs, and what have you. We're all going to lose everything we ever loved. Is there still an essential me left? Am I still worthy of love? Am I still capable of giving love? So that's part of the exploration. If I don't understand who I am, then I'm going to try to find out. And I'm going to try to create a safe space for me to do that.
I've had a handful of patients that told me that cancer was their opportunity and blessing to really, truly live a life that was very meaningful, because that was the time they really found out who their essential self was. They were playing so many roles
Yes,
throughout
yes,
their
yes.
life, and finally you get hit with cancer, and you may not necessarily be able to play those roles. Then they start to ask themselves, well, who am I? And they usually discover there's something much greater than they ever were before.
Yes. And the paradox of that, having been with people at the very end of life, maybe I'm greater than, and maybe this is a little abstract to get into this conversation, but there's this kind of release into I'm the one with the all. My identity doesn't even
Mhm.
matter anymore. The only thing
Yeah.
that matters is this moment.
Yeah.
You're here, or maybe I can't even talk anymore. But you're here, I get it that you're here. Isn't this moment great? I love you so much.
Yeah.
What else is there to say? What else is there to say?
That connection, I think, for so many patients, once they reach that, they were really feeling like they're a part of everything, whereas before maybe they just lived for themselves or what they thought was themselves, and they started to see that through this experience they are really more connected than they ever thought
Yes.
before.
I hear that quite a lot.
Yeah.
And in an extreme sense, I remember one patient who was so steeped in values of self-reliance
Mhm.
and get it done and you don't complain and all of those things went back for generations. She was so steeped in it that she said when she was first diagnosed, she considered not getting treatment.
Mm.
A young woman in her mid-30s. Not because she didn't want to live, but she didn't want to have to tell people I'm sick. She didn't want to have to anybody make concessions for her. Going to have to take time off from work. I'm going to need help getting to the clinic. No, I'll just die rather than be a burden to anybody else. And she moved from that to, well, if I do get treatment, nobody's going to know about it.
Mhm.
And then she moved to a point of having to really tell, she got treatment, having to tell her boss the truth. This is why. And she shared with me this astonishing healing that happened in this relationship with her boss. He apparently totally opened up to her, and she felt this deep sense of communion with him that would never have been possible without him. And even while we were talking, she said, I realized, I guess, I'm glad I got cancer. And she couldn't believe those words came out of her mouth. And she said, I can't believe I said that. And then she said it again, I'm glad I got cancer. I'm not advocating it for everybody, but it can be that journey, what I would call towards spiritual essence.
Yeah. In fact, that's the inspiration for the title of this project, the Live Again Project. Going back to the holidays
Yes.
and Thanksgiving, Christmas, bringing in the new year, there are probably things people associate with the holidays, being very, very busy,
Yes.
and having to do a lot. I would imagine with appointments or physically feeling weak, and certainly all the emotional things you go through with cancer, those are very, how does a patient kind of rectify or be able to have these competing thoughts of what the holidays were like, very, very busy, to maybe not being able to do some of those things?
It's just a challenge. And for some, they can move into that kind of easily, hey, I'm sick, I can't do that anymore. I remember one woman who the cancer had gone to her spine and she could not stand anymore. And she was talking in our support group about how great it would be not to be waited on and just to be able to stand up and put dishes in the dishwasher. And everybody in the group said, you got to aim higher than that, sister. But for her, that would have been success, to be able to put dishes in a dishwasher. She did get better for a time, and then when she came back, the group said, I did do dishes. It isn't all it's cracked up to be. I got to aim higher. But that idea of I can do what I can do, I can make it mean what it means, but to always be aware that we're also talking about loss, even without cancer. If you live to a certain age, the holidays are going to have a lot of loss attached to it. The loved ones who aren't there anymore, grandma isn't there anymore, the loss of innocence when you're a kid, and if you grew up in a Christian tradition and we're waiting for Santa and leaving the cookie and half the cookie was gone, oh, that's proof Santa's real. That dies, and so there's loss attached. So cancer just compounds the sense of loss. Can we be at peace with loss? Yeah, it can be a hard time. And I'll find my sweetness where I can. If somebody takes their hand and puts it on mine and says, how you doing, sweetie? That'll be my Christmas present.
I think what I'm hearing is, do you find people find it helpful to create new possibilities that these holidays mean for them now, and recognize that maybe these traditions can be changed year to year?
Yes.
And have power over that.
Or I'm going to reject the holidays altogether. Why does it have to have meaning? It's another day of the year, and I'm going to go on a cruise or go to Hawaii, and I'm going to pretend like it doesn't exist. And some people cope that way. I know a bereaved family who lost their son 10 years ago, who I knew very well. And they, every year, they go to the tropics. We're just not even going to pretend that it's about Christmas anymore. And then that has its own meaning, the family time away in the tropics. But yeah, being free enough to say, I'm going to have it mean this. We always have a choice of what meaning we're going to assign to our journey, to our past, to our hopes of the future, and sometimes we can forget that. Oh no, Christmas should be this. We have to have grandma's china. We have to have a tree. We have to have this. Well, you know.
I think it's very important to reflect on the strengths that patients and their family members develop going through cancer, and be able to kind of celebrate those things during this time.
And it can be, and yet families can be a source of struggle and pain too. Family might be chosen family. It might mean the person at work, the custodian at work, who kind of sees me in a different way than my brother, who drives me crazy. But again, it always comes back to the connection. One thing for me that I work with patients, sometimes patients will often ask me to say a prayer at the end of a visit, and I usually try to construct a prayer that uses some of the language or the metaphors that are meaningful to the patient after they've told me about themselves. But one thing that's clear around holiday time, so many cultures have holidays this time of year that all have to do with the darkness and the light. Primitive people, these days got shorter. We didn't know if the sun was ever going to come back or our crops going to grow again. that there's this spark of hope, and this imagery exists certainly in the Jewish tradition, in the pagan tradition, in the Christian tradition. So if there's a time of darkness in your life, can we have faith that there's still some spark of light, that the sun will come back, whatever that means to us? Awareness of myself, peace in my heart, a sense of gratitude, a sense of joy when I don't feel any access to joy or gratitude. Maybe it'll come back. I'm going to sit here and hold the possibility. Maybe that's where I'm going to find the sacred.
You know, oftentimes, you know, during the holidays, you see a cancer patient, and sometimes it's visible, whether they've gone through chemo or you're in a wheelchair, and, you know, we could see somebody walking down the street such as that. How do you approach, because I know in my past it's been very difficult to know whether you smile, whether you wish them a Merry Christmas. And I think it can freeze a lot of people up as to not know how to approach a patient with cancer for the holidays.
I don't think a smile is ever unwelcome.
Mm-hmm.
Kindness is never unwelcome. Here, let me get that door for you. Whatever the thing is, can I help get you across the street? Yes, that's how do we respond to the patient. But just having seen earlier today a metastatic cancer patient who looks as healthy as you or I because they're not on chemo, the cancer's rife through her body, it's another burden to walk around looking as healthy as you or I, and people say, oh, you're looking great, the treatment must be working, you're doing fine. They are actually in bigger trouble, so to speak, than the stage 1 patient who's lost their hair and maybe looks pasty and awful, but they're going to get better. So what happens when my pain isn't visible? One patient I had, when her hair started to grow back after chemo, kept shaving her head because she liked it being visible that I have cancer, because she liked the intimacy that it created. That when she stepped on the bus, somebody gave her a seat, said, how you doing? She didn't want the hair to grow back and be all normal again and feel like, interesting twist, right? And it was not coming from a self-pitying place, or I want people to feel sorry for me.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked connecting with people, being able to be vulnerable. There's that word again.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of being bald gives you permission to be vulnerable because it's so visible. And there's people just as sick who don't have that visible vulnerability.
How would you say patients can reach out and allow their caretakers to feel vulnerability without having them feel pity? I've had some patients tell me how depressed their family members are, and they just feel pity rather than seeing them as a human being. Is there a conversation that I think...
I'm confused by who you're concerned about in this
Okay.
scenario. Is this who's going to initiate the conversation, the patient or the caregiver, the loved one?
The patient.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you look at a patient, you just see them as a patient, you react,
Right.
you know, to every little thing because you care for them, you love them so much.
Right.
And I think it sometimes for certain patients doesn't allow them to just feel like a human being. They feel like they're a sick person. Is there a conversation that
I absolutely
people have?
encourage patients to speak up. I'm still me,
Yeah.
or I'm still your mother, I'm still your wife, I'm still your husband. One case that comes to mind, this was a very sweet man, Lebanese man, and very proud father and husband. And he knew he was dying and actually said to me, do you think it's selfish of me to pursue treatment because of all the inconvenience it's going to cause my family? His whole thing was about being the dad and caring for everybody. And we explored that, and he got the treatment, but his family couldn't believe that when we'd have a family conversation. Doesn't he know we do everything in the world to keep him with us as long as we could? They just couldn't connect. he wanted to be the protector, and if he couldn't be the protector, the provider, it's like, maybe I should just go. And they're feeling like, no, we love you so much. Don't you know it's a gift to be able to do whatever we can to put lotion on your feet or whatnot? And the final thing that he said he wanted to be able to do for his family was plan his own funeral and make all those arrangements so they wouldn't have to worry about it. And they wouldn't even hear of the discussion. Oh, no, we're not talking about that. So they robbed him of the ability to give his gift, to be himself. When you say, I've kind of disappeared from how I looked before, but I can still be this. I can still at least plan my funeral. The gift was rejected. So it is kind of sometimes incumbent on the patient to say, wait a minute, I'm still in here. I'm still Michael. Can you talk to me like Michael and not like the sick cancer patient? It's a challenge.
I can't think of anything more to ask.
No.
We're gonna cut there, but again, I was thinking of something to close with. I feel like we didn't talk much. You know, I think there was some really great tidbits that we're gonna be taking
Well, this
anyway.
may be a 3 to
But-
5 minute
Yeah,
thing about,
yeah.
I mean, the holidays and the sacred piece. I think,
Yeah. Do you have a conclusion kind of statement about the holidays? And-
I always come back to the same thing, that however you are is however you are. There was a movie, Tootsie, 30-some years ago, and I only saw it then. It came out, I think, in '82.
Mhm.
And I often quote it to patients, and this line may not even be in there, but I remember it. I
Mhm.
haven't seen the movie that long. Did you ever see the movie, Tootsie?
Tootsie, no, I don't think so.
Dustin
Yeah.
Hoffman
Mhm.
plays an out-of-work actor who makes it big dressing up as a woman and becoming a soap opera star.
Mhm.
But they really think he's a woman. And his girlfriend is Terry Garr, who's a great comedic actress. When she discovers it's Dustin Hoffman, who is this Dorothy character, she's having a big emotional meltdown. I can't believe that's you. And Bill Murray's trying to calm her down, and she says, stop it. I just have to feel this way until I don't feel this way anymore.
Hmm.
And that is it in a nutshell, allowing ourselves grace to feel this way until I don't feel this way anymore. I counsel bereaved people, how long is this going to go on? Until it stops. We don't have timelines, we don't live on timelines. So with the holidays, can we give ourselves peace to be how we are? Maybe we'll be pissed off through the whole thing,
Mhm.
and we'll call our anger sacred. To me, it's all a part of God anyway. We can't just say God is only love, joy, forgiveness, gratitude, and peace, and anger, resentment, denial is somehow not. Either it's all divine and holy, or none of it is. It's all human. So, however I'm going to get through this holidays, however I'm going to get through this holiday, and I'm going to call it sacred. And I'm going to try to hold the space for the possibility of light to be born again somehow in me.
I think we end with that.
That looks good.
That's awesome. That was great. That was great.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Good.
I'm gonna add you too on my Facebook. You know, I was thinking if you go through a lot of my older things, you'll find.
Yes, I'd like to.
You'll find somebody that is a bit of a rascal and sort of like I was mentioning to you. You know, just like a goofball, and I think I still am. You know, sometimes I feel like I can't be a certain way because I'm a physician.
Mm.
I can't, you know, and sort of where I am and kind of my process here is recognizing who I was before, not trying to hide what my life was, because I think the story of sort of this transformation makes it more real. And yeah.
I think you're on the right track there. It took every step of your journey to bring you where you are here, so why deny that?
Yeah, because I was thinking, okay, well, if I wanted to do this, let me appear as just this professional and wipe away who, you know, that person up to here. So let me just cancel all that out. And I was thinking, well, no, this was who I was and who I decided to share I was with certain people. And you'll
Yeah.
notice, and I'll probably change my name again, my name is not my name, it's NF Blue X or whatever. Because I
Oh.
didn't want to assign, my professional name to
I
my
see.
personal, so I wanted to keep that separate. But as I see it now, if I'm not congruent with who I am, with all my different circles, then who am I but just somebody that plays roles?
Different facets.
Yeah, yeah. And I just sort of want to be authentic throughout.
Well, good.
Yeah.
So we're on this journey together.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
Did you get anything from that, Ken? That was amazing.
I got it.
Oh, no, not this, but the whole interview.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, good. It
Only an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll walk you out.
Okay.
And we'll set up a time to meet again. And this will probably, I'll talk to Ken about it, hopefully in the next week or so.
Give me a week.
Yeah. a week or
Well,
so.
whenever, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ken.
Oh, you're
See
welcome,
you
sir.
again.
Dude, Ken, thanks. I'll be back.
Okay.